What does community resilience mean to you? How did you come up with this definition? Why does community resilience matter? To me, community resilience means a group of people with shared stakes in a community or organization or along those lines, coming together to solve a problem that affects some or all of the members. Since the definition of community is so broad and is really just any collection of people that have something in common, it's not just a geological term. Community resilience can be found in any group of people who could be identified as a community, like a church group or a club or something like that. Community resilience matters because it's a group effort into improving a shared space. It's common sense that 30 people working on a project is going to yield a better result than 6. It's important because on top of working to rectify a situation, it builds a stronger connection within the community that will create a more positive environment for all members and make solving problems in the future easier. Give 3 examples of what people and or nonprofits in your community are doing to help. So just 3 organizations I picked. The first one I picked was the Blessings in a Backpack program. A lot of children rely on school breakfasts and lunch to have food during the week, especially those that qualify for free lunches. But those things are not available during the weekend, and those children face insecurity when they go home. To remedy this, donations to Blessings in a Backpack are used to purchase easy-to-prepare nutritional food that are packed into backpacks by volunteers and sent home with children on Fridays to hold them over during the weekend. Most of my friends in elementary school got these bags, and I got them for a couple years, and I know it's a huge relief to parents that rely on those kinds of systems during the week when money's tight. A huge overlooked community is incarcerated individuals who are often denied basic rights. Communities that have a higher crime rate and higher rates of incarceration are commonly found in areas that have underfunded education and less access to education in general. In Oakland County, we have the Prisoners Literature Project. This organization was created to help supply free reading materials to prisoners to encourage the pursuit of knowledge, establish an easier access to information, and facilitate self-improvement. Their goal is to show a heavily stigmatized community that they are still regarded as full humans and are deserving of basic privileges. There is so much research showing that prisoners that are offered access to these types of programs have a lesser rate of reincarceration after they are out, and I firmly believe that the goal of our justice system needs to be rehabilitation instead of isolation from the general public. An organization I did a lot of volunteer with back home, and I'm sure I've already talked about this in class before, is the Clarkston Family Farm. Clarkston is a very privileged community, but a lot of kids come from families with 2 working parents. As a result, there are a lot of fast food options and packaged meals for dinners. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can cause kids to not be exposed to fresh produce or awareness of where their food comes from. As sustainable food practices become more and more important to the future, it's important to educate the next generation on those practices. So the farm is a community garden space that has programs structured to educate local kids on healthy and sustainable eating practices and how to appreciate and protect the world around us while still reaping the rewards of the earth. How can you become more comfortable with being challenged, being in conflict, and engaging with differences of opinions from those who do not agree with your stance? I think the only way you can be confident in your own opinions is to be exposed to other ones that are against it. And because an uninformed opinion is meaningless and does more harm than good, in my opinion. To me, it's one of those things that you have to practice and train yourself in by putting yourself in those situations where you're exposed to other people's views, so you can either become more confident in your own stance on the topic, or you can grow to change. By behaving with respect towards the other person, and hopefully the other person follows suit, you can engage in a civilized conversation. I think that it's important to understand that not everything needs to be taken personally in those discussions, and that the goal of that conversation should be to inform them of how you see things while still listening to the way they see things. I'm definitely not a master, and I tend to take criticism personally about anything that I believe, but I have found that if I'm aggressive, it turns the opportunity to share my perspective with someone into a thing they're going to remember as a crazy lady yelling at them, further cementing their opposing view. When you envision a resilient community, what do you see? How would it be different from the community, what currently exists? How will you get from here to there? When I think of a resilient community, I see a group of people with open communications and connections with one another that create a family group mindset where you feel comfortable saying what you think because you know that they're not going to go against you too aggressively. When you have a deep connection with other people and view them as a part of an us instead of a them, it makes you more willing to help them. So when you said like the community, I was thinking about the Grand Valley community, and I think that since Grand Valley is so big, it helps to belong to smaller clubs or groups to make you feel a greater sense of belonging that will cause you to feel more responsibility to be a part of active change. I think that a lot of people just feel like they're floating when they get to college because all those pre-existing connections aren't there anymore. So by getting involved and finding people that you share things in common with, people will feel more grounded and responsible for the state of the community we exist in. How would you describe the identity of your community? Now imagine someone in the community with a different age, ethnicity, economic class than you. How would they describe the community's identity differently? I would say the community that I came from, Clarkston. There was a lot of teachings about how important involvement was. I didn't grow up in a super small town, but it wasn't huge, and the church, all the churches there played a huge part in the community identity. The big churches in Clarkston were evangelical, so outreach was a huge part, and I think that created a lot of connectivity and inspired people to be engaged in each other's lives. A lot of the outreach programs in Clarkston that I was exposed to were catered to a younger audience. That could just be because I was the target audience of those programs, so I was more aware of them. But I feel like the community was probably a lot different for people that were like older or moved there after the fact. We had a neighbor that was an older gentleman who lost his wife a couple years back, and whenever we brought over baked goods or something for the holidays, he always talked about how lonely and quiet the house is. I could see if an older person wasn't engaged in a church or an already established like connection thing, they would see Clarkston as a very cliquey group of people or just very lonely for them. I feel like any member of the community, regardless of age, not attached to some religious organization, would probably see it as a whole different town where everyone kind of did their own thing.